hole. "Greta, go!" her mother hissed. "It's for charity." Nothing scandalized Nell Russakoff like a lack of performative generosity. Owl Island was a small town. Leaving would mean answering questions for weeks, which would mean offending people about the auction, a beloved town tradition, which would mean even more talking to people who'd known her since she was a child and still treated her like she was one. Greta gritted her teeth so hard she felt a headache threaten and walked stiffly to the stage, taking care not to meet anyone's eyes lest she perish from mortification or reveal previously unknown Medusa-like powers. She stood next to the other volunteers with what she hoped was dignity, but would see in pictures later was the pose of someone who desperately needed to pee. One by one, the volunteers were bid on. Greta had attended this auction since she was old enough to remember, and since she was old enough to remember, it had been her least favorite part of the holiday festivities. Still, she went every year because it was a family tradition, and because she loved the rest of the holiday fair that first December weekend. The auction had even been the occasion of her coming out 5 years before. She and Tilly had been in the booth their family ran every fair. The handmade items they were selling changed with the whims of their mother's crafting. One year it had been quilted oven mitts, another it had been felted table decorations, and that year it had been knitted hats and mittens. Tilly and Adelaide were the most enthusiastic crafters and usually made the bulk of the items alongside their mom. Sadie liked to sell things but not make them. Maggie would start one of whatever they were making that year and quickly lose interest. And their father concerned himself with all elements of display, providing snacks and cheerleading, but didn't have the dexterity for most crafts. His attempts were generally hilarious, though, and every year they had him try to make one and enshrined it on the shelf above the piano, which now held 2 decades of misshapen crafts. In the family booth, Tilly had been showing Greta how to knit a hat for the 3rd time, her attempts at mittens having proven hopeless, and Greta had sworn bitterly as the whole thing slid off her needles. "Watch your language," her old math teacher Mr. Sorensen had said as he walked past. "Men don't bid on young ladies with potty mouths at the holiday auction." Greta, home for the holidays from her freshman year of college and high on the freedom of her first months away from her family, had snapped back, "Well, this young lady has no interest in men or being auctioned off to anyone, so that'll work out great for all of us." Tilly and Greta's father, who'd returned with hot cocos in time to overhear the exchange, had turned to her with identical hazel eyes, her father's wide and Tilly's smiling. Tilly raised an eyebrow. "Yeah?" "Yeah," Greta said, starting to shake with nerves. Her whole family, strike that, the whole town, would know in a matter of hours. She shoved her woeful knitting at Sadie and got to her feet. As she walked past her father, he caught her shoulder and squeezed. When she looked up at him, he smiled and nodded just once. Then he let her walk away to be alone with her thoughts. Now she wished desperately for a similar exit strategy, but she was on stage in the middle of the town square with nearly the entire population of Owl Island staring at her. Just as she was telling herself that it couldn't get any worse, she caught sight of Tabitha Ryder. Greta winced. Tabitha's smooth blonde bangs and elfin face were framed by the faux fur-lined hood she had pulled up against the Maine winter. She held mittened hands with Jordan Laverty, who was handsome and too infuriatingly kind to loathe the way Greta would have liked. Hey, at least Greta had a perfectly self-deprecating story to tell when the topic of first loves came up. Not everyone had confessed their love to their best friend and then puked on her shoes. Although, Greta found out, more had than you might think. Tabitha's blue eyes grew wide when she saw Greta on stage, and Greta braced herself for the utter carnage of her heart that would follow if Tabitha smirked at her pathetic misfortune. But Tabitha didn't smirk. It was so much worse. Tabitha, curse the kind soul that had made Greta love.